Well, I want to provide a little bit of context. I am class of 2006. I'm based in Hong Kong, and um, I did Action Lab as well, which some of you have done, which was an opportunity to gather some of the entrepreneurs in our classes and different people across cohorts to really work to build capacity. So, really taking things from all the great things we do and all the different ways we do them and figuring out how can we accelerate that? How can we give you guys and our collective energy and wisdom and interaction to make your impact greater? And so, of course, that was an initiative that I just attended. Eva organized the entire thing in the Philippines. Emily Chu and had spearheaded some of it with Rajiv and basically, I was a free writer on the whole thing. Eddy and Ada organized a gorgeous opportunity for us to gather in Chiang Mai. Eva was there too. Kristin was there. And so the idea is, how can we take this 10 to 15 people that we gathered in in a location that not everybody could be at or attend, and try to sprinkle some of that fairy dust more broadly across the network. And for those of you who can't go to summits, I know I've been working at almost every single summit and haven't been able to attend a lot. How can we start to bring people together across cohorts, across disciplines, and across the world, really? So this is an opportunity to do that. We've been focused on topics that build capacity, and we did the first one on succession based on the Tokyo Summit. And that was, you build something amazing, suddenly circumstances have changed. So you want to figure out how to transition. How do you do that? And we had Amina and Rohan talking about that. And this one is, I would say, loosely about fundraising. It's a sort of sustainable financing. How do you get the money or the resources in whatever way to take what you're trying to do, be that a unicorn or a nonprofit, and really, figure out how to get the resources to take it to the next level, whatever that means. So it's fairly broad, but I just want to make sure we can have some kind of context to have an interesting conversation. So we have this time Eddy, who is previously based in Singapore at Temasek, and that's when I met him in Chiang Mai, and now has started his own firm based in Thailand and is doing both board advisory and company advisory, as well as investing. And we also have Kristin. Kristin, are you here? I haven't heard you say hello, and I feel like you may have some
I
issues
think
in
she's got
terms.
some issues. Yeah, I don't
Yeah, it
see
seems
her,
like.
Dana. Yeah, she was
Yeah.
up there.
So Kristin's dialing in from Amsterdam, I believe. So I'm having a lot of trouble joining. Okay, terrible internet in Europe. But in any case, we'll start the dialogue without her, and she'll come in as as she can. Because I think that, just judging from the people I know in this room, one of the things that we have an opportunity to discuss is really collectively to discuss all the questions we have and all the wisdom we have, similar to what we have always done for Action Lab. So Eddy, thank you so much and welcome. We'll welcome Kristin later.
All right, no, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can you do me the favor of just talking a little bit about your background and relationship with Asia 21
Oh,
and
okay.
Action Lab?
Okay. Maybe starting with my professional background first, and then how I got into Asia 21. So I've been doing finance and investment for the last 20 plus years. So I started doing investment banking, with Merrill Lynch out here in Bangkok. Back then it was late 1990s, early 2000s. So that was, right after the Asian financial crisis. So a lot of the work that I've done at the time was helping banks restructure its NPL portfolio, trying to raise capital for companies that are trying to survive at the time. Doing M&A defense for banks. We had 56 finance company closed down in Thailand at the time. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I moved on to be part of the founding team of the first local private equity fund in Thailand called Lombard Investments. The fund has done really well, and it's investing in its fifth fund now. But I joined at the start, and so we did a lot of interesting investments. And got involved in leading companies in Thailand at the time, and we were able to cherry pick our investments because the stock markets just recently crashed. Banks were full of NPLs; they were not lending. So we were the only source of capital available. And if you ever visit Bangkok, there is this a huge shopping mall that is the landmark of Bangkok called Central World. This is where the New Year countdowns. This is where the Erewhon Shrine, the four-faced Buddha, intersect. So that building was partly built with the money that I invested in when I worked for the private equity firm. So we invested in that project when it was still an old shopping mall. We refurbished it into what became the Limelight of Bangkok, and a few other investments. And then I went to the US and did my MBA at Harvard, and then I joined Temasek, and I've been investing and managing the portfolio of Temasek for about 15 years in Singapore before I decided to move back to my hometown, to Bangkok, about 18 months ago. At Temasek, I had three main roles. The first 6-7 years was doing global energy investing, looking after the power utilities, doing upstream oil and gas investments. This was at the time when the world was still predominantly short on oil. The oil price was $120 per barrel. This was 2007, 2008. Oil and gas was still the predominant source of fuel. And then things changed. And so I moved to the CEO office, became the chief of staff for our CEO at Temasek. I did that for 2 years. So that was more strategy, general management role, helping our CEO. And then the last 6 years or so, before I returned to Thailand, I was the head of Southeast Asia investing. So I looked after the whole Southeast Asia portfolio for Temasek. So investing in Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, etc. So that's my background. So I moved back about 18 months ago, started my own little investment company, focusing on buy and build. So this is only managing our own capital, me and my partners and now family and friends. So we're looking to do, buy and build. So we're going to be buying, mid-sized business and help them professionalize and continue to build upon, that business. We'll be focusing on food and health and wellness sector in Thailand. Other than that, I'm also on the board of a few other companies, one of which is a company called VNG in Vietnam. It's the first unicorn and the largest tech platform in Vietnam. It is the Tencent of Vietnam. So they have gaming business. They have the chat app business called Zalo, which is the predominant social media platform in Vietnam, with 70% of the population on that platform. They have payment business similar to Tencent WeChat WePay, and it has cloud enterprise business similar to other tech platforms. I'm helping the company to IPO, so it's currently doing filing with the on Nasdaq. So assuming the market holds up and assuming the regulatory approval is obtained, it'll be the first Vietnamese company and as a matter of fact, the first Southeast Asian company to be listed on Nasdaq. So
wow.
Fingers crossed on that one.
So after this chat, then, if you find that your fundraising goes so well that you want to go IPO, Eddy's your man.
Yeah. And so I'm also helping a few other businesses, including renewable companies that does, rooftop solar, wind farms across the region, as well as helping as an advisor, helping my business school classmate who started a private credit fund in Singapore. It's a $100 million fund that provides credit to startup. And this is rare, right? Because you have a lot of VC providing equity funding, but in this environment where, raising equity is not so easy, a lot of the VC firms are, holding back, or if you're going to raise equity, it might be a very deep down round and you don't want to be diluted that much. Private credit might be the type of capital that allows you to bridge for 3 years. So I'm helping him as an advisor on that one. And so they're investing in Indonesia and fintech, in some, e-commerce business across the region, etc. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, Kristin, you made it. I'm so glad. You look like you're maybe out in the dark alley somewhere, but please unmute yourself and just give us a quick introduction about yourself, your business, and what you're up to.
Okay, thanks so much. Great to see you both and everyone else also here. And sorry I was late trying to chase the Wi-Fi around this complex, I guess. So I'm Kristin, one of the co-founders of Saathi, and we're based in Ahmedabad in India. And we're addressing lack of access to menstrual products in a sustainable way. So we started with the issue of addressing lack of access to menstrual products in India, where only 36% of women have access. And we saw this was something where majority of the women and girls that don't have access live in rural areas. And so on top of that, we're thinking, how do we address lack of access? One way, obviously, is to provide products, but the majority of products contain a lot of plastics and chemicals, which happen to also have other health negative effects as well. So then we thought, well, on top of that, where are people going to dispose of these products, and how will that impact the community as well? So then basically we decided, okay, well, maybe we should try to address this in a more holistic way, thinking through that, what are the possibilities of creating this as a biodegradable, compostable product. We were already using agri-waste materials, so banana fiber. And so we thought maybe we can make the whole thing biodegradable and compostable. And so once it took us maybe 2 years to develop the product and then start sales. And actually, I met Eddy at one of the Action Labs in 2016, I guess. So the first Action Lab, and he actually did help us a lot with kind of reframing and thinking about how we were going to scale at the stage where we had like no funding really, or very minimal funding, I would say, especially given kind of some of the other paths we've taken so far. So he's like, okay, let's think of this from the ground up of how we can, make the most of what you do have and kind of reframe what it is that you need. And so even on the small scale also, that was quite helpful. And kind of coming to today, because we're looking at, we're replacing a plastic product with a single-use plastic product with a completely biodegradable and compostable alternative. One of the things we're trying to develop right now is more focused on plastic avoidance. So you probably have heard of carbon credits, plastic credits as well. And the only issue is that with carbon, it's more developed. So there's things like carbon mitigation and, of course, different scopes. And mitigation is kind of the best option. It's basically like prevention. And so for plastic, there's no equivalent. So we're looking at, how can we have that equivalent of carbon mitigation to incentivize these non-plastic alternatives to single-use plastic items today, of which ours would be one example. But of course, there are plenty of other products out there as well that probably we have yet to find out because we haven't searched the entire planet. But I think, there are definitely a couple that come to mind. And this is something we want to kind of develop as a form of, scale up financing, if you will, for products like this. So.
So I was wondering if you guys, I know that, I've invited people to ask questions as well in the chat, but I thought it would be useful since you guys know each other well to just talk a little bit about, what some of the common questions are that in particular you've seen across. So Kristin, you've been to a ton of Action Labs, right? How many? 2, 3? You were part of the founding family.
2 or 3, yeah, 2 or 3 maybe. Yeah.
And Eddy as well. Like, what are some of the common pitfalls or pain points that you guys see in fundraising for people in our community?
Yeah.
I see.
Kristin, you want to go first?
Okay, sure. I think one is definitely just finding the right kind of funding for that particular stage. So like, if you're very early stage, then certain kinds of funding aren't relevant. And then also just, again, kind of pinpointing the amount that you really need. So that was something that we did work on with Eddy in the early days of like, okay, we don't even have, we have just started our manufacturing unit. We don't have much runway left. We're trying to raise money, but people are saying, well, where's your, X, Y, and Z? And so I think kind of figuring out exactly like what's the right kind of financing for each stage was definitely something that other people also were looking for.
Yeah, I think one of the common challenge or confusion for a lot of the first-time entrepreneur and startups when looking for fundraising is awareness or understanding of the whole investor ecosystem and the various pockets of funds available, right? So if I have to put it on a very broad spectrum, there's probably 3 or 4 buckets of the types of potential funders or investor, if you call them. The first bucket would be, I would say, traditional source of institutional investor, people like venture capital, private equity firms, or banks, right? That are in the business of making investments and providing capital. This group of people, their main metrics in evaluating a project is really just financial return, right? That is the main yardstick that they go by. So if you have a very interesting project that that has strong social impacts or environmental impact. In the case of Kristin, it's both the social impact and the environmental impact. But the returns is sort of, might not be the most exciting comparing to some of the other, digital tech-based type of opportunity that they see. Then it sort of becomes, less interesting for the traditional, VC investor, right? Who in the last decade or this cycle, has made all of their money from all the digital-based, software as a service type of startup, and very little VC money is out there looking for product-based or manufacturing-based type of startup, right? Unlike in the past, because this is the cycle, right? So that's the traditional type of VC. So if you have a business model that doesn't quite fit squarely with what the VCs are looking for, then it's like banging your head against the wall. There's a second type of investor that care about returns, but also care about impact, right? And so these are like impact-based funds. Sometimes you call ESG funds or sustainable liability type of investment funds. So these are the guys who might place more emphasis or give a bit more importance on the ESG aspect, and the returns doesn't have to be the highest, but you still need decent looking returns along with impact, right? So this is type of the second type of investor. So if your project fits this mold, then but right now the trend is anything that is decarbonization. I think is sort of carbon-based. Sort of this is the theme that these investors would be looking at. And then the third type of investor, I would say, would be impact-oriented or like people who look at social enterprise, who don't really care so much about the returns. All they want is maybe their principal back with single digits type of interest. So these could be like development, financial institution type. This could be endowment fund type, or this could be family office or nonprofit organization that has a pocket, for social oriented projects, and their hurdle rate or their required rate of returns is actually, quite low. But they care more about impact. They care more about the non-financial metrics that the project can deliver, right? And then there's the last bucket, which is grant, right? So these are charity, right? And so if your project doesn't make money and does not have any returns, but it's 100% social impact, charitable, then you go after these nonprofit organizations. That's a separate pool, right? And so being quite clear and knowing where your project stands will save you a lot of time, so that you don't keep calling on the wrong type of funder. So I think that would be the first point that I want to make.
Do you agree, Kristin? Did you find that? I mean, it's so interesting because to a certain extent, I actually have been on the boards of nonprofits that have shifted from a grant to social enterprise, more sustainable financing. I've been an LP for a female investment fund that focuses on social enterprise, but with a pretty high hurdle rate. So I'm just wondering if you found, as you go off, Kristin, I know you're thinking of alternate ways to finance. Is that pretty true, or do you find that the lines are blurring?
I definitely think there are these different buckets. And I think for the last two buckets, I would say also like for our stage in the earlier days, I mean, even still convincing some of the bigger funders was tough because they still want proof points of the impact or of the reach and of how it will work and the model and everything. So I still think like in the early days, we did have to go after some of the kind of, more grant type of, or like business plan competition, or these types of funding where it was a little bit more on the vision of the thing that we're trying to create. Now we do have proof points or metrics, which we measure and have been measuring for years now. So then we can kind of show those and leverage that. But still, I think that's why I think maybe it's a little bit of like what you have to show for that. Or like, I think another thing is, if you can get a group to do a pilot, like a longer term pilot in the early stages, that's definitely also helpful. So we had done a quite big pilot for maybe 18 months, which was a huge number of products for us at the time, but also had a lot of reach. And on top of that, we were able to measure the impact of that distribution activity for 18 months, which is quite convincing, because they're all the social and environmental impacts that we were able to see over that time were all basically, we were very lucky in a way, right? They were all pretty much exactly what we were hypothesizing. We were saying, okay, well, if we provide this in this area, you'll see an increase in both social mobility, health and environmental impact. And that's exactly what the data showed. So it's a good study.
So what was helpful? I mean, I'm turn it over to you, just to even talk a little bit about what was helpful in terms of the different things that you've done together and what you think would be helpful to the other folks. I mean, we have a wealth of wisdom on this call, right? We have Ada, who does venture philanthropy. We have Ibo, who's just raised the seed round going into mid-range. So we have, a lot of different people in different segments, but what do you think might be helpful as people consider their financing and fundraising goals? What are some of the things that you guys found in your conversations over that time?
Maybe before we start, that might be good to hear, from the others as well, what the expectation is and where you are, in terms of fundraising, where your interests are, so that we can, we can pick the right examples and focus on the right thing, right? That would be relevant for you guys. If you don't
Yeah,
mind.
sure. That sounds great. No, let's go straight to the conversation. Sounds perfect. All right, let's go to the gallery. And who would like to raise a hand and just talk a little bit about what they are doing? Iba, are you there? Oh, I'm sorry. Darwin, you raised your hand. Why don't you?
Yes. So hi everyone. Hi, Iba. So just to the question, so I wear many hats. I am class, I don't know, 2009. I forget now from the Philippines, like Iba. I have a day job. I have a corporate job with United Health Group, but I also built my own startup around 6 years ago. So that startup is doing fairly okay. We had our seed round in 2019 for around 350,000 US dollars. Despite the pandemic, our sector was severely affected. The startup managed to do well, and in fact did really well during the pandemic. But now we're at a stage where we have to grow and we need ammunition. So we're planning a Series A, so around 6 years after the birth of the startup. Any more than the advice, because we have received and we read up on a lot of the advice, we have a fairly senior board as well. My question is, what mistakes that may not be obvious do you see startups or organizations at this stage committing? And what should we be avoiding? The non-obvious ones, I guess. So that's it. Thank you.
Get a sense of who. All right, wonderful. Eva, do you want to talk?
Yeah, voluntold. But yeah, like Diana said, before the pandemic, so I've been helping micro entrepreneurs in the Philippines, their sari stores, for almost a decade, right? It was a social enterprise. Then we exited that, and then we used our tech because running a startup and a social enterprise is hard. It's like running a marathon and shooting both your feet because you have two bottom lines. And I said, let's focus on making something that makes money first, and then let's figure out the social impact after. So we started doing enterprise solutions based on the learnings we had in making these apps for micro entrepreneurs. And then the pandemic hits. And at the same time, we've still got about 5,000 micro entrepreneurs as our CSR. That's like our giving back. Like we give a percentage of whatever we make and we help these micro entrepreneurs. And because we had the longest lockdown and one of the strictest lockdowns in the world in the Philippines, because people couldn't go to malls, couldn't go to groceries, guess where they'd buy their goods? In these small sari stores. So we saw our utilization increase in those small stores, and then big companies started approaching us saying, we're not getting data from Nielsen. We don't know where our product should go. We don't know how our competition is doing. You guys have that information. And the small stores were like, well, we need help. And at that time, we're like, oh, no, we don't. Our big customers, the big companies, they're shut down. So we decided to pivot and help these micro entrepreneurs. Fast forward to a year ago, we were able to get some great partners. Speaking about what Kristin was saying, finding the right partner is important. We got a good mix. ADB Ventures it was part of our pre-seed and our seed round, and we balanced them off with a private equity group, CVC. So these guys, they fight, wow. And it's like parents fighting, and then you just let them figure it out, and then you follow your own path, and they're almost equal, right? So you have somebody driving us for growth, and you also have somebody saying, wait a minute, how are we helping? My challenge is from 5,000, like Darwin, we're now at 270,000 sari stores. And we need people on the ground. We need to build these relationships because we were just a software layer, but now we've got like 30% of the Philippine grocery brands that supply the Philippine grocery basket signed up. We need more resources, right? And when we raised a year ago, is very, very different from the situation now. So I would love to hear advice. We hear a lot of things like it's a VC winter. It's very, very challenging. And yeah, I would love to just generally get advice on what to do next.
Cool. Anyone want to raise a hand or pop in and talk about your fundraising financing journey so that we can tailor things to you?
Diana, Hyojung?
Yes.
This is not I don't have my case to kind of ask for, but Eddy and Kristin and Eva, I'm just wondering, what is the government's kind of working with the government for your project? Like, it sounds like it's very, much like a social impact, and then government could be a good unit for that. So I think the 4 buckets that Eddy explained in the beginning, is government for in one of those, or is it like a separate resources we are looking at? I think that could be a part of conversation if it's fit in, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Ada, I see you nodding your head, and I wondered if you wanted to add anything because you have your own unique investment lens. Would you like to just introduce and say hello and
Hi everyone. I'm Ada from Thailand. I work in social investment sector, and but to be honest, I actually joined this conversation here partly because last time when I met you guys, I still work in social investment, but right now I also run a social enterprise on for myself, and then we need to raise fund later this year. So I was always on the side where, giving people support or connecting people with other funders. I actually never beg people for money. So I'm keen to learn. Learning from being on the other side. That's why I joined here. But if anyone interested in broader social investment, I work mainly on philanthropy rather than investment. That's why I want to learn how investor and entrepreneur, the dynamic of that conversation, how to position yourself and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. It's good to know that. Anyone else want to join in and let us know if you have any specific companies that you're working on or questions that you're curious about? Fionn, Sheldon, Pia, Kay, Marie, Melissa, no?
I can talk a little bit. Hi, everyone. This is Sheldon. So I'm actually, let me put my camera up. Can you see me?
No.
Never mind.
That's okay. We can hear you though.
Oh yeah, so I'm actually staying at my friend's house to dog sit while they are traveling. But anyway, so I am working for the Clinton Health Access Initiative. It's not a philanthropy, but it's a nonprofit organization that we support low middle income countries with health access across different, public health agendas, including COVID. So I've been sort of burnt out studying through the COVID because, I've been trying to source health commodities from India, China, and to support low middle income countries. So in terms of my role, so I'm more focused on working with pharmaceutical companies in China and trying to persuade them to improve the quality up to like for vaccines, COVID vaccines like EUL. You've heard a lot during the COVID time, but in the normal settings, it should be the WHO pre-qualification in terms of the quality of the drugs, vaccines, diagnostics, as well as other health commodities. So like I've been running this shop for almost 10 years. I remember when I first joined Asia 21 back in 2013, I was just fresh out of business school. I was really trying to debate on how to, work on social impact, social enterprise. But eventually, I just got stuck at the nonprofit sector because a lot of issues involving like fundraising for social impact, social enterprise. And I was literally very distracted in terms of like working on like multiple proposals, like for 1 year or so. And then I couldn't get too much like attention. But when I met like my former colleagues who used to work on climate energy with the Clinton Foundation, they were saying, okay, like you can pick up a cause that fits your purpose, and you don't need to work on social impact kind of causes if you can really attract money from, think mind philanthropies or companies. So that's how I got plugged in with a lot of attention from like family businesses in Hong Kong and Singapore. And then, recently just from like UBS, etc. And they're really looking at for metrics for their like investment, like their wealth to go into social impact or, like global health whatsoever. It's more what like value for money. So they are really looking at like to put in $1, they want to see like if they can get $10 sort of effect. So
interesting.
Like yes, definitely. So and we just took that on. Literally, we used that for so many projects, and that worked. That's actually super attractive to all the donors, including like FCDO, which was formerly known as UK DFAID. So we were saying, okay, like if we can go and negotiate the price for pneumococcal vaccine for children in low middle income countries, if we can bring down the price by 50%, 70%, and how many lives can be saved. And then we just put together that kind of proposal one after the other. And it was just become like, really appealing and really attractive. So, and we started to do like for contraceptives, for example, like implantable contraceptives for women and girls in Africa. So we did the same thing, like value for money. We literally just put one metric, like with $1 spent and how many lives can be impacted. So I was very inspired by that kind of, work. And then we wanted to do more. Now we just expanded over into oxygen, like for babies or for people impacted by COVID. So that works very well. Yeah. So that's share with you. If you couldn't really get, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off either. I think it's really interesting. I feel like you have a really interesting model, and in a way it sort of proves the point that fundraising is kind of how long is it? It's as long as a piece of string. Yeah, everybody is doing completely different things to create impact, and so it's really cool to hear your story. Let's hear from Kay Marie as well, so that we can have a sort of round robin. And Fionn, I'm sorry you don't feel well, but thank you for putting your intro in the chat. Kay Marie?
Oh, kia ora, everybody. I am grateful to hear and see everybody today. Apologies, I won't show my face at the moment. It's 1:42 in the morning here in New Zealand. I look tragic. My hair is all over the place, but it's really nice to see and hear what everybody's doing. I just thought I'd share a little bit about our Indigenous, what do I call it? We are a limited liability company. Our company is called AHO, which developed a decentralized platform for individuals and families to store their own ancestry and also their own archive, their own family archive. And then we built out a system for communities to be able to have storehouses or like community clouds where they could remotely store their own information. We had a mix of funding, so we actually won a pitch competition, and in that competition we got $100,000 commercial investment, and for that we had to exchange 10% equity for that. And then based on the development work and a lot of community engagement work, we then have raised just over $1 million and now are building a digital identity app through a grant from a company called Cardano, a Cardano Foundation, so it's a foundation. There have been a range of different things that I've learned along my journey. I was very dedicated to raising capital in a way that was in alignment with our Indigenous values. And so building out our company constitution to protect our kaupapa or our intentions was very important. But it's also really interesting. I'm in a very challenging situation at the moment between my other co-founder. But yeah, it's interesting how Indigenous values, how they can be utilized to sell, but when also the kind of hard edge of business also comes in and diluting your shareholding and how you hold, you know, how do I navigate this world of raising capital without losing my soul, without, you know, selling out my values, and also feeling like I can also add value to this, to our company that I helped to birth. And so to try and accommodate, I guess we were at, which is a fork in the road, we established a charitable trust. And then we also, so we've got a charitable trust, which is really my jam, which is community engagement, training, and getting out and connecting with our tribal communities on the ground. And that's really exciting. But I'm really interested to see if anyone else has had to compromise their values in order to raise capital. And I'm also equally interested in any female stories or perspectives on how you've had to, you know, like in situations where you may end up being outnumbered by directors or the tip between genders starts to happen and power plays start to occur. I'm just really interested to know if you've gone through that type of experience, how have you managed to keep yourself safe, stay focused on your value system, and also, like really negotiate what we call a mana enhancing way, but to negotiate in a way where all parties have a win-win situation. Kia ora.
I've just been writing that down. Thanks, Kay Marie. That sounds amazing. Wow. Kristin, Eddy, this is so cool. I love all these stories. Did anybody want to raise their hand and talk about? There's so many different stories. So kind of amazing. And just to sort of go through, we also have Fionn, which I'll just say aloud for those of you who are on phones and maybe can't see the chat, who has a company called Time Auction, a skill volunteer matching platform that encourages volunteering with empowering rewards in Hong Kong. I have been thinking about for-profit social business and curious about fundraising in this space. Her NGO serves other NGOs with people who are volunteering and also corporate partnerships. So where do you want to start, Eddy and Kristin? There's a lot of people. Do you want to start with Kay Marie and talking about how to raise money without losing your soul?
Sure. Maybe Kristin, you wanna jump in first. I think the woman aspect and a lot of what she spoke about it. I'm pretty sure you went through some of these considerations.
Yeah, thanks everyone for sharing the stories though. It's really, really interesting also to hear the different perspectives. And then I definitely think exactly, Kay Marie, what you said about kind of trying to raise money and not compromising on values is something like maybe we've done to a fault sometimes. But we do really try to do that too, because we're trying to build something where we're also serving a lot of people, and we're afraid actually that like if someone invests and then they have more say in how we do things, basically that they're going to change the direction of how we do things, and that the impact that we worked so hard to build won't be there anymore. It will get cut out. Because those people want profit, and thinking specifically about like big corporate investors. So at the same time, though, maybe that's, I wouldn't say like we're an expert in this and like what's the fine balance between the two. Because I think also not having the corporate backing, does limit certain kinds of distribution as well. So, but I think for us, it's been like we've spent so much time kind of building a model where we do have impacts, that the impacts really take precedent. And we have found other ways to fund. So we're banking on those ways for now. And I think there will be another bridge to cross when we find like the right corporate partner going down the road. One thing that is interesting, I think, is that corporates are starting to realize they also need to have more social impact anyway, because it's good for their brand. So maybe there is kind of a point where these two things converge, and it's the best interest of the brand to have the impact and not to kill it off. And to kind of see the long-term effect of that on their bottom line. Because I think this isn't just charity, but it is going to help them in the long run as well. Anyway, there's a little bit of a rant, but I think that's what I've seen kind of over the years. And I think there are things that are changing now, especially with attitudes towards climate change, towards, empowerment, diversity, all these different elements that are making companies think a little bit differently. But I think it's slow. It's a slow change. That's coming from the outside, of course, looking at it there. But in terms of other stories, so like one in the early days when we were trying to raise some funding, there was definitely a couple encounters we had where, either these people didn't understand the product at all, and then they don't use it, so they didn't really understand the benefit of our product or anything like that. And it was much more difficult then, of course, to say why this product is needed and all those other things which you're supposed to make as your case when the person has no idea, kind of the first thing about the user experience. And we also had a lot of kind of people come in and say, you know what, I can do this better than you, just I'll give you like actually they're like, okay, we'll invest whatever money you need. You just be like kind of the figurehead, and we'll take care of everything else. And well, again, we kind of were like, yeah, but we're just starting out and we are building this model to have all these impacts. And so I think in this regard, we don't want to just give up the company to be run by a marketing machine just because maybe they like the story or they think they can milk the story and get a lot of people to buy the product kind of thing. Yeah, so these are kind of, I think, two stories that I'd share right now, but
yeah, that's great. Thanks, Kristin. I mean, I think from my experience, I'll give you the other side, right? So I think Kristin has shared with you the entrepreneur side of the story and someone who's really passionate about the impact of the work that Saathi is doing. I think on the other side is, at the end of the day, it's just a trade-off, right? I guess in the world of investor and someone who controls capital and is in the position of allocating capital, we go through these trade-off all the time. Between a project that looks good on the ESG on impact, but maybe the returns is sort of marginal versus something that is really attractive, the returns, but the impact side might be a bit marginal. So there's always a trade-off. Marie, I guess in your case, I would say you can't deny the fact that if you have certain values, that in and of itself creates a constraint to the type of investor or the type of funder who would be attracted to your project, right? Because money would flow towards project that has highest return without any constraint. And if the return is so-so, and if you place constraint around, your mission, your values, your purpose, that also filters out a bunch of potential investor, right? And so what you're left is just a much smaller universe of potential funder who shares your vision, who shares your passion, who shares your values. So that's reality. So then you need to work a little bit harder to go find, this smaller group of potential funder who shares, the same values as you do, or that your project, carries. And it can be, nonprofit, it can be philanthropy, it can be, grant-based. But then the question is, and I don't know enough about your project to comment, but if your project is not commercially sustainable, meaning if it doesn't generate enough returns for it to sustain itself, then eventually it becomes a charitable project where you have to constantly, every year go out and, raise money from someone, right? Because you don't have the returns or the profit to sustain your project. And I'm not saying that's your project. I'm saying if that's the case. But if your project is profitable, commercially feasible, and can be self-sustained, then you might be able to find some investor who would back you for the impact. And within 3, 4, 5 years, you should be able to get to a certain scale where you can start to support yourself and be less reliant on having to go out and raise funds all the time. So I guess it's how you what your business model, what your project looks like, and so that would dictate the type of funder that you have to go out and look for, and whether you need to continually raise funds or raise grants or go find a philanthropic organization to continue to fund you, or you can find investor who can back you for 1, 2, 3 rounds, and then from there onwards you can be self-sustained. I want to also comment a little bit on Chi Hong's question around whether those 4 buckets includes government. You asked about government. I'm not an expert on government, so I was speaking more about private sector investors and capital providers. I think government has its own considerations and issues. And there are organizations, mostly nonprofit and NGOs who works with government, who come up with public-private partnership type of projects where you have private source of capital combining with certain government grants to make some of those projects happen. But I'm not an expert in the field, so I can't comment. And I saw Eva, commenting in the chat box saying, in the Philippines, working with the government is impossible. And so, in certain countries, in certain areas, I think the private sector has a lot of role to play in terms of development, and we can't rely on just government funding for a lot of emerging markets. I was going to say, Ada actually, it's she runs a crowdfunding platform in Thailand, so that's another source, right? So for nonprofit type of projects where it's sort of one-off, where you want to create an impact on a specific cause on a one-off basis, that's another potential source of fund, right? And Ada, do you want to say something about that?
Yes. So we actually have quite a number of social enterprise raising fund on the platform. So it could be like one of the projects that they run, and some also so we have been around for 11 years. I just currently run the organization, but it's founded 11 years ago, but I just start running this for the past 5 years. But from our day one, there was some projects that they start off as idea and then raise fund to develop prototype using the platform. And right now it become one of the big social enterprise in the country already, 10 years, 11 years afterward. And even the established social enterprise, when they want to develop a new business unit and no one funded them because it's something new and people are not sure yet. Crowdfunding is actually another good tool for them to find backers for all those ideas. So we actually have one very established social enterprise that doing ecotourism. They are very well known in the community tourism in the country. But when they want to start a new business line doing community meal, chef, local chef from different part of Thailand, it's something very new. Nobody give them money. So they actually raise fund on the platform, partly because for the funding and also for market testing to see whether people like the idea and want to back them. And those who back them on this project become their first customer too, first group of customer. So and I think there's crowdfunding in pretty much every country now, maybe even more than one platform. So that could be another source. And crowdfunding need funding too, so I will consult with Eddy later.
Thank you, Ada. So I was thinking about one of the questions that Darwin asked at the very beginning, and he asked so well and so early that I had forgotten to put it in the other questions in the list of questions. But what are some of the non-obvious mistakes to avoid when fundraising? I think, it seems really obvious, but it never happens. And the one that I think of is pitching people that are not understanding what people are interested in. So I used to invest in future of work in ed tech, and I would have people, come and pitch me things related to pet care or something like that. That's sort of, it's an obvious one, but it just sort of still happens. But maybe you have more non-obvious ones.
I think that's a very good example. I mean, that's knowing who you're talking to and knowing the type of investor or funder that match your project, right? That's the first point. Sorry, I was going to say, there's also other newer source of pool of capital available these days that in the past might not really exist, right? And so we're seeing more and more family offices, right? And so these are highly wealthy individuals who have set aside their family wealth to do to manage your own personal investments, and in a way this is sort of a relatively new class of investor and asset allocator that could be very flexible, right? Because the patriarch, the owner of the money, this is not institutional money. There might not be any strict mandate, and it can be, something that interests the principal's passion or belief or values. Could easily attract capital from this pool, right? And it could be, profit oriented. It could be, nonprofit. It could be, grant. It could be, all sorts of things, right? And so that's another sort of new pool where, people can start to explore. And it could be value based, right? And so if you know the principal, what he or she believes in, if you have a project that, matches the principal's interests, it can be, they could be a very good source as a long-term back-end supporter. I guess Darwin's question is quite hard. I mean, anything that's sort of non-obvious, it's going to be quite context specific, I would say. But in my experience in Southeast Asia and in Thailand, what I've seen for a lot of startups in Thailand that failed to, that managed to sort of raise seed capital, and maybe get to Series A, but never got to Series B, or struggling to raise Series A. I think a lot of time is because they are too domestically focused, right? And so a lot of the startups and entrepreneurs in Thailand, base their project on, just Thailand, because maybe it might be the language barrier, maybe it might be, the limited understanding of other markets in the region, but they start off, and the whole business plan is built around just one single country. I think it can be done if you are in Indonesia, right? Because that's close to 300 million population, or actually over 380 million population. So one single market, one single country would be large enough. But for countries like Thailand, it might be sort of neither here nor there. So that's one of the challenge that I keep seeing. Startups and entrepreneurs struggling to raise money beyond that. The other thing is that, as I say, a lot of the VC firm in Southeast Asia has only existed in the last 7 years or so, right? So this is the first, VC, the first startup cycle you see in Southeast Asia. So the first cycle was, back in, late 90s, during the dot-com boom. But if you look back, all the VC firms that invested in Southeast Asia during the dot-com boom no longer exist today in Southeast Asia. The only one firm left is Vertex Venture, which is a subsidiary of Temasek. So they've been around. But all the other, large VC funds that you see in Southeast Asia, whether it's, East Venture, Golden Gate Venture, Open Space, and what have you, has only came into existence in this past sort of 6-7 years, right? During this whole, digital app and platform boom. So their experience and their appetite, it's only sort of, app-based, platform-based type of startups. As I say, once you move out of, that area, once you start talking about, medical device, or a manufacturing-based type of product, or any other type of, more traditional business startups, these VC firms would not be interested, right? So not all startup can attract, VC capital, because a lot of the VCs have a certain playbook or have a certain, template that they look for, right? And if your business doesn't quite fit squarely within their playbook, it's going to be quite hard to raise capital. So and people forget, right, that in the old days, if you have a more traditional business, you start off by bootstrapping. So bootstrapping, using family and friends capital, finding, maybe a corporate who has a certain interest in your sector, and raising fund from a corporate, have a corporate shareholder could actually be a way, to get your business going if you don't fit quite squarely with what VCs are looking for, right? And so I think that's the other thing that I wanted to share.
I think one of the other alternate opportunities is sometimes the strategic route, where more and more, either because you have a for-profit company or even as an NGO, you can consider how to do strategic partnerships whereby you're reaching an audience that a corporate might be interested in as a growth market, but cannot really reach effectively on their own. So there's a couple of interesting examples from the Shared Value Initiative in Australia that talk about that, where they really have, it allowed, for instance, National Australia Bank to partner with an NGO. It saved them 70 million Australian dollars. So they're, obviously quite happy to pay the NGO some of the savings that they get. Iba, you've had your hand raised.
Yeah, I want to share an embarrassing story about when I was idealistic and young. Talking about what Darwin, trying to answer Darwin's question, and kind of to add what Eddy said earlier about limitations. So when we first started doing this 10 years ago with Sari Sari stores, the only success we had was with people on the ground, on motorcycles, teaching the moms in the store. And I was adamant about being asset light and pure software, right? And I told an investor that I did not want to increase the number of people I had in the field, a potential investor, VC. And that was a nightmare of mine, like having to handle all of these people and, monitoring their activities and making sure that they visited so many stores. And fast forward to today, I've got like 60 people in the field, and that's all I do. And I regret, and I kind of miss the naivete of that young person. It was like, it's got to be all software, there's no human involved. But the reality is, you still need those people in the ground. So I kick myself every time. And every time we talk to an investor, that comes to mind. Like, you're putting your own limitations. Like, I don't want more than 20 people in my team. That's a nightmare. Yeah, that's just what I wanted to share. There are all kinds of limitations you can put.
I feel like the stories that we hear from all the different entrepreneurs are absolutely as valuable as from investors. And I'm wondering, in the very end of our discussion, we usually do a sort of round of, questions you have or asks and offers based on some of the conversation. We've had a lot of that discussion already, but maybe we can just go around and to each person, even those of you who may not specifically have something to do, but wanted to just ask or offer any questions, just to close us out. And thank you very much for all of your time. I'll go first just to demonstrate. I am happy to offer a chat with any of you if you need more focus on leadership coaching as you think about your fundraising. I don't invest anymore, but I'm happy to be a thought partner with any of the Asia 21 folks. And I'm delighted that so many of you have vulnerably shared some of your struggles and your aspirations. Eddy, Kristin, do you guys want to go too? Any asks or offers? Anything you need?
Yeah, no, so for me, again, likewise, if you want to reach out to me, or if you want to have a side conversation on anything that you feel I might be able to, sort of provide some color on, I'm happy to have a chat. So I've just left a message with my email in the chat box. So just feel free to email me or ping me. Just a Zoom call away.
Thank you, Eddy. Kristin?
Yeah. I'm not sure how many people I can support in terms of just the stage we're at versus everyone else. But
well, feel free to ask if you need something as well. That's sort of the point.
Yeah, but we have done, like, we have raised quite a bit of funding that was, non-equity funding and that sort of thing. So happy to share more about that or share stories. And maybe get into more of the nitty-gritty, some of the things specific things that we've done, if that's helpful for anyone. And the second thing is kind of around like the carbon and plastic credit realm. If anyone's interested to kind of like brainstorm about ideas around, just talk in depth. I know I've had a couple conversations with Paresh about this, but happy to chat about that as well, because it's just fun, and also I think this is very interesting, and hopefully we can materialize it soon. So yeah.
Great. Iba, what was your ask offer was non-equity, please?
No, I'd love to hear, Kristin, how to get non-equity funding. What is that?
Like debt?
Oh, actually, like getting grants or some of these awards and things like that. Some of that is equity free. So yeah, but happy to talk more in depth about like some of the sources of that and also what's relevant. We've been kind of lucky in, being relevant to a lot of different types of funding that way. So yeah.
There's such a lively chat. You guys are great. And I feel like it's sort of silly to do it and here because I've seen like so-and-so, I'm going to follow up with you, et cetera, in terms of the chat. There's a lot of people who have had their opportunity. All right. Ada, thank you. Feel free to reach out. I will do a key takeaways in terms of all of the conversation we had. We'll go through and pull out some of the key takeaways, some of the different sources of financing, different people that we need. And then if any of you need to contact somebody, I'm sure you can do it on LinkedIn or you can go through Heechung. But for anybody who dropped their email in the chat, I will also have access to that. So feel free to email me as well. If you said, oh, so-and-so said that they would like to connect with me and I didn't get that. So anybody else want to comment? Paresh, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Diana. Well, yes, great conversation, very robust. I didn't need to chime in at all. So thank you to our speakers and participants for that. I would just want to briefly mention that I, alongside Diana, Fritz, Duncan, Tanya, Emily, and many others, have been working on establishing a more comprehensive sort of Asia 21 impact platform. And so Diana's obviously got us kickstarted with the Impact Dialogue series. But the idea is to add a sort of a Asia 21 pitch or demo day that would be a regularly scheduled event where social and purpose-driven entrepreneurs, enterprises can pitch their projects to a group of potential investors, partners, sponsors, and stakeholders. And to then also establish some kind of an Asia 21 impact fund. This is very aspirational, of course, early stage concept at this point, but something that can facilitate access to a talent pool, Marcoms, but especially the full spectrum of funding, from returnable grants, credit, equity. Okay, maybe not equity, and other resources. So if anyone's interested, there's a lot of wisdom here and practical experience that we'd love to tap into. And so please reach out to Diana or to myself.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paresh. And it seems to me like we have gone the full hour and a half, and a lot of people have either dropped off because they're tired But one of the things that you'll find when you leave your Zoom is just feedback. So if you have any feedback for us in terms of other topics you want, then please let me know via email or do it via the feedback form. We're trying different times of day to get different markets, and we're trying different topics to see what's the most useful with a basic strategy to help build capacity and impact for everyone. So thank you very much, Juanla. If anyone's interested in raising capital and getting their business into the US, please give me a call. Wonderful. I'm almost tempted to share all of the emails that people have put in the chat with all of you and just do a round robin. In fact, I'm just going to do that. And Juanla, since you have put even your phone number, privacy be damned, and we'll do a round robin email to connect the people who've been on this call. It's few enough people that I think that we can have another robust discussion, and I want to make sure that you connect after. There's been so much chat about people wanting to actually take this as a catalyst and go off and have further conversations. Is exactly the way that we like to work. And that's kind of the point of us coming together, is to continue every other month or maybe every month and see how we can make more impact in the world. So thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful evening or morning. Good luck with your speaking, Kristin. Thank you so much, Eddy. Thank you so much, Kristin. Thank you so much, Hee-Chung, for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Paresh, Melissa, Eva, also Viv. Thank you, Fez, for producing everything. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.